The champagne tower began to collapse 3 seconds before the gunshot. Nerina Vale saw the crystal glasses tilt, heard a woman scream, and threw herself forward to save a tray she could never afford to replace. Her shoulder struck the tall man standing beside it. He stumbled. The bullet meant for his heart shattered a marble statue behind him instead. For one breathless second, the entire ballroom froze. Then chaos erupted. Guests dropped behind tables. Armed men pulled weapons from beneath tailored jackets. The orchestra fell silent as security guards surrounded the tall stranger Nerina had knocked to the floor. She stared at the pistol in his hand, then at the broken marble where his chest had been moments earlier. "Oh," she whispered, "that's why everyone is screaming." The man beneath her did not seem grateful. His eyes were an icy shade of gray, and the thin scar along his jaw made his expression look even more severe. He wore a black suit with no tie, as if he had attended the charity gala under protest. One hand held the gun. The other gripped Nerina's waist firmly enough to keep her from falling onto a carpet covered in glass. "Get off me," he said. "I would love to, but my dress is caught on your watch." Another shot cracked across the ballroom. The man rolled, pulling her behind an overturned table as his guards returned fire. Nerina covered her head while expensive bottles burst above them. "Stay down," he ordered. "I wasn't planning to dance." His gaze flickered toward her, surprised by the answer. A broad-shouldered guard crouched beside them. "Mr. Valecki, the shooter is moving toward the east corridor. Take him alive." The name struck Nerina harder than the bullet had struck the statue. Orsino Valecki. People in Bellariva rarely spoke that name above a whisper. Officially, he was the owner of Valecki Maritime, 3 luxury hotels, and half the warehouses along the southern harbor. Unofficially, he controlled every shipment that entered the city after midnight. Some called him a businessman. Others called him the most disciplined criminal Bellariva had ever produced. Nerina called him the reason she had just lost her job. A guard yanked her upright and searched her while another examined the broken champagne tower. "I'm catering staff," Nerina protested. "I'm armed with nothing but bad judgment." Orsino stood, brushed glass from his sleeve, and studied her. The ballroom was still in confusion, but his attention remained fixed on the woman who had knocked him out of a bullet's path. She wore an inexpensive green dress beneath a white catering apron. A loose curl had fallen from her messy knot. There was a smear of chocolate on her cheek and a small tear in one stocking. She did not look like an assassin. Then again, the best assassins rarely did. "What made the glasses fall?" he asked. "My sleeve caught the tablecloth." "Why were you running?" "Because the pastry chef threatened to remove my skin with a cheese grater if table 12 didn't get its desserts." His face remained unreadable. "And why did you push me?" "I was trying to catch the champagne." "You chose the glasses over a human being?" "The glasses were worth more than my rent." A guard coughed, hiding what might have been a laugh. Orsino's gaze sharpened. Women usually behaved differently around him. Some flirted because they wanted access to his fortune. Others trembled because they knew his reputation. Nerina looked irritated, frightened, and deeply concerned about a ruined tray of miniature cakes. "What's your name?" "Nerina Vale." Before he could ask another question, the catering manager stormed toward them. "Nerina!" She flinched. The manager pointed at the destruction. "You are finished. Do you understand me? Fired. I should never have hired you after what happened at the Marconi wedding." That fountain was already unstable. And the mayor's luncheon? The pigeon entered through an open window. The museum dinner? The fire alarm saved everyone from food poisoning. "Get out." Nerina untied her apron slowly. "Am I still being paid for tonight?" The manager snatched the apron from her. "I'll take that as a no." She turned to leave, but 2 of Orsino's men blocked her path. "She goes nowhere," he said. Nerina looked back. "You heard him. I'm fired. You were standing beside me when someone tried to kill me. I was also standing beside 200 other people, and you moved me at exactly the right moment. Believe me, nothing in my life has ever happened at the right moment." Orsino approached until only a pace separated them. He was taller than she had realized. There was nothing theatrical about his authority. He did not need to raise his voice or threaten anyone. The people around him simply watched for the smallest movement of his hand. "You are coming with me," he said. Nerina's stomach tightened. That sounds less like an invitation and more like the beginning of a missing person investigation. If you're innocent, you have nothing to fear. That sentence has never comforted an innocent person. For the first time, the corner of his mouth almost moved. Almost. Then he turned and walked away, certain she would be brought after him. Nerina considered running. A guard gently but firmly took her arm. "Of course," she muttered. "The first time I save someone's life, he abducts me." Orsino's armored car carried her away from the ballroom through rain-polished streets. 2 security vehicles followed. Nerina sat at the far end of the back seat, gripping her damaged handbag, while Orsino spoke quietly into his phone. He issued instructions about road closures, surveillance recordings, and the captured shooter. Not once did panic enter his voice. When the call ended, Nerina tried the door. "Locked." "Where are you taking me?" "To answer questions." "I already answered your questions. You told me about a pastry chef and a pigeon. You asked why I was running." Orsino turned toward her. "You've had 3 jobs in 6 months. 4. You were dismissed from all of them. Technically, 1 restaurant closed after the owner vanished with the tax money. I consider that a mutual separation. You have debts. I prefer the phrase financially pursued. You owe 12,000 euros. Her humor disappeared. "How do you know that?" "My people search your name. In the 5 minutes since we left. They're efficient. That doesn't make it less disturbing." The car slowed at an intersection. A delivery truck raced through the red light. The driver slammed the brakes. Orsino caught Nerina before she struck the partition, pulling her against his chest. The truck missed their front bumper by inches and crashed into a lamppost. Everyone went still. Orsino released her immediately. The lead guard's voice came over the radio. It was an attack. Driver lost control. Nerina stared through the window. "You see? Bad things follow me." Orsino watched the shattered lamppost sparks dying in the rain. "Not tonight," he said. "Tonight, they keep missing me." His estate stood on a rocky hill above Bellariva's harbor, hidden behind iron gates and rows of cypress trees. Nerina had expected vulgar displays of wealth. Instead, the house was built from pale stone, elegant and severe, with wide windows facing the sea. No women greeted them. No female staff crossed the corridors. Every guard, driver, and servant Nerina saw was male. The house felt less like a home than a carefully guarded monument to solitude. She was taken to a library where Orsino's security chief, Gavril Dane, questioned her for nearly an hour. Nerina explained her employment, her debt, her rented room above a laundromat, and the series of accidents that had followed her since childhood. At 7, she had fallen during a school play and pulled the curtain down on the headmaster. At 16, a shelf had collapsed during her first shift in a grocery store. At 22, she had accidentally sent a private complaint about her supervisor to the company's entire mailing list. At 26, her scooter had rolled downhill without her and crashed through the window of a betting shop. "That incident stopped an armed robbery," she added. Gavril paused. "Ow!" The robbers thought the police were driving through the window. From the corner, Orsino watched her closely. "Your parents?" Gavril asked. "My father died when I was 12. My mother lives in San Orlino with my younger brother." "Why don't you live with them?" "Because my mother's husband believes unmarried women over 25 invite evil spirits into the house." Gavril's expression did not change. Nerina leaned closer. "He also believes vinegar cures baldness, so I don't respect his medical opinions." "Your debt?" She hesitated. Orsino noticed. Gavril repeated the question. "My brother needed surgery 2 years ago. The public waiting list was too long. I borrowed from a private lender." "Who?" "Dario Kelm." The room changed. Gavril looked at Orsino. Nerina saw it. "What?" "Dario Kelm works for Sabre & Voss," Orsino said. She knew that name too. Everyone in Bellariva did. Voss controlled the eastern docks, and had spent the past year pushing against Valecki territory. "I borrowed money," Nerina said. "I didn't join a criminal organization." "How often does Kelm contact you?" "When payment is late." "Has he ever asked about me?" "Why would he?" "Tonight's shooter was connected to Voss." Nerina rose. "Then arrest Voss. I have nothing to do with this." Sit down. No. You searched my life, dragged me into your car, and accused me of arranging an assassination because I owe money to the wrong monster. Orsino's face hardened. No one walks out while I'm speaking. The words were quiet, but they landed like a locked door. Nerina met his gaze. Then you should learn to speak to people without imprisoning them. Every guard in the room became perfectly still. Orsino stepped toward her. Most people backed away when he approached. Nerina did not. She was frightened. He could see it in the quick rise of her chest. But she held her ground. For a moment, an old memory cut through him. A woman in a silver dress approaching his father's study. A gentle smile. A perfume that smelled of orange blossoms. Then blood on the floor. Orsino closed the memory before it could finish. You will remain here tonight, he said. You can't keep me here. The men who try to kill me may believe you helped me. If you return home, they might silence you before they discover the truth. That stopped her. Am I a suspect or someone you're protecting? Both. Nerina sank back into the chair. This is officially worse than the pigeon. At 2 a.m, Orsino received confirmation that Nerina had no connection to the shooter. Every camera angle supported her account. Her sleeve had caught the cloth. Her fall had been an accident. But another detail bothered him. The shooter had changed position seconds before firing, as if someone inside the ballroom had signaled that Orsino's usual bodyguard formation had shifted. There was a traitor close to him. He should have sent Nerina away under guard. Instead, he stood outside the guest room assigned to her and listened to an argument inside. I'm not eating that, Nerina said. It is vegetable soup, replied his housekeeper, Tomon. It contains mushrooms. Yes, mushrooms hate me. They are incapable of emotion. My throat closes when I eat them. That feels personal. Orsino entered. Tomon looked relieved. Mr. Valecki, she refuses her meal. Because he's trying to murder me. With soup, Tomon said wearily. Orsino glanced at the tray. Prepare something else. Tomon stared. At this hour? Yes. The housekeeper took the tray and left, mumbling in Croatian. Nerina sat by the window wearing an oversized shirt someone had provided. You could have let me go home. You are safer here. Do you lock every guest in her room? I don't have guests. Clearly. His eyes narrowed. What does that mean? This house feels like women have been outlawed. They have. Nerina thought he was joking. His expression told her otherwise. No female staff? She asked. No. No female visitors? No. No girlfriends? That is none of your concern. So that's also no. Orsino had ended business partnerships for less disrespect, yet he found himself answering her. Women are permitted at public events. They are not permitted in my private residences. Why? Because I prefer it. That sounds healthy. He should have walked out. Instead, he remained near the door, as if the room contained something dangerous. Nerina noticed the distance. Not arrogance, she realized. Fear. The most feared man in Bellariva was afraid of allowing a woman close enough to touch him. She could have mocked him. Something in his expression stopped her. My mother used to say, people build rules around wounds they don't want anyone to see, Nerina said. And your mother married a man who treats vinegar as medicine. She isn't always wise. Orsino looked toward the window. My father trusted a woman, he said. She entered our home as his companion. For 2 years, she learned the routines, the codes, and the location of every weapon. Then she opened the gates for his enemies. Nerina's expression softened. I was 19 when she shot him. My younger sister was killed trying to escape. I'm sorry. I don't require sympathy. No, but perhaps you deserve some. He disliked how gently she said it. He turned to leave. Mr. Valecki? He stopped. Thank you for changing the soup. It was such a small thing that he did not understand why it followed him through the silent corridors. By morning, Nerina expected to be released. Instead, someone tried to burn down her apartment. Gavril showed her the photographs at breakfast. Black smoke stained the brick above her window. Firefighters had stopped the flames before they spread to neighboring rooms, but everything she owned had been damaged. My mother's letters were there, she whispered. We recovered a metal box, Gavril said. The contents appear intact. Nerina pressed both hands against the table, fighting tears. Orsino stood across the room. Voss's men did this. Why? To frighten you. Or to make me believe you were important. I'm not important. You became important the moment you saved my life. I ruined a champagne tower. And changed the aim of the bullet. She looked at him. What happens now? You stay here until I identify the traitor and end the threat. No. Gavril frowned. Miss Vale, I won't hide in a rich man's house while people destroy my life. I have debts. I need work. Orsino glanced at the photographs. You can work for me. As what? Professional human shield. His mouth tightened. Nerina immediately regretted it. That was insensitive. It was. I apologize. He studied her for a moment. Few people apologize to him without making excuses. Vlecki Maritime is preparing the Bellariva Lantern Festival, he said. The event coordinator resigned yesterday. Why? He discovered that stealing from me damages his health. Nerina decided not to ask for details. You want me to coordinate a festival? You know catering operations. You can identify vendors, manage schedules, and remain inside protected buildings. You examine my employment record. I'm a disaster. You also saved my life twice in one evening. The truck wasn't because of me. You were in the car. That is not how luck works. Until I decide otherwise, it is. Nerina folded her arms. How much? Gavril looked offended. Orsino named a weekly amount that made her sit straighter. I accept. Without negotiating, I was earning 12 euros an hour carrying soup that wanted me dead. That was how Nerina Vale became the first woman permitted to work inside Orsino Vlecki's private estate in 11 years. The staff expected her to last a day. By lunchtime, she had spilled coffee on a shipping contract, jammed the printer, and caused a power outage by plugging 3 heaters into one socket. But the coffee revealed that 2 pages of the contract had been printed with erasable ink. The jammed printer contained a hidden duplicate of Orsino's security schedule. And when the lights went out, a man in the records office attempted to flee through a service exit. Gavril caught him carrying a flash drive filled with confidential files. Orsino summoned Nerina to his office. She entered cautiously. Before you say anything, the electrician confirmed that the wiring was already faulty. He held up the flash drive. The clerk had been selling information to Voss for 8 months. I didn't know. You exposed him. I broke a printer. You also found falsified contract pages. I spilled coffee. He leaned back in his chair. What exactly are you? He asked. Recently unemployed. A strange sound escaped him. It took Nerina a moment to realize Orsino Vlecki had laughed. It was brief and rough, as if the sound had not been used in years. Gavril, standing by the door, looked genuinely alarmed. Orsino recovered first. Tomon has begun calling you Fortuna, the goddess of luck. He believes your disasters are protecting this house. Tell him Fortuna usually had a wheel. I had a scooter, but it was confiscated after the betting shop incident. By the end of the week, the nickname had spread. The guards called her Lucky Goddess whenever she entered a room, though Nerina suspected at least half of them were teasing her. Orsino did not tease. He watched. He watched her reorganize the festival plans until every vendor had a clear timetable. He watched her argue with a wealthy sponsor who wanted free advertising but refused to donate to the Harbor Clinic. He watched her sit on the kitchen floor with a young guard who had received news of his mother's death, listening until he was able to breathe again. Nerina's accidents were noisy. Her kindness was quiet. That disturbed him more. He began remembering details without intending to. She hated mushrooms, drank coffee with cinnamon, and always saved the red candies for last. She tapped a pencil against her wrist while solving problems. When anxious, she counted doorways. She noticed things about him too. He ate dinner at exactly 8, but rarely finished it. He checked every window twice before sleeping. He never sat with his back to a door. He kept his sister's old violin in a glass cabinet, but could not bear to play it. One rainy evening, Nerina found him standing before that cabinet. What was her name? She asked. Orsino did not tell her to leave. Lizette. Was she good? Terrible. Nerina smiled faintly. She made the same piece sound like an argument between cats, he continued. But she practiced every evening because she believed discipline could defeat a lack of talent. Did it? No. Nerina laughed. Orsino looked at her, and for a moment the room no longer felt haunted. "She sounds wonderful," Nerina said. She was. The silence that followed was not uncomfortable. That frightened him. He stepped away from the cabinet. "The eastern courtyard is restricted after dark. I'm standing in the music room. You crossed the courtyard to get here. I was looking for the kitchen. You've been here 9 days, and I have found the kitchen 4 times. That is an excellent success rate." He moved toward the door, but Nerina touched his wrist. Orsino recoiled so sharply that she stumbled backward. His face changed. The coldness returned at once. "Never touch me without permission." "I'm sorry." She lowered her hand. He saw the hurt she tried to hide, but he could not bring himself to repair it. The memory of orange blossom perfume had already filled the room. That night, Nerina decided she would complete the festival and leave. She could work for a dangerous man. She could not keep walking around a wound that had turned an entire house into a prison. The following afternoon, her lender arrived at the estate gates. Dario Kelm demanded immediate payment, claiming her debt had tripled because of late fees. When guards refused him entry, he raised a folder toward a security camera. "Tell Vale I have her brother's hospital records," he shouted. "Tell her I know what she did." Nerina went pale when she saw the footage. Orsino noticed. "What did you do?" "Nothing. It was too quick." He dismissed the guards from his office. "Nerina." She stared at the floor. "My brother's surgery wasn't the only reason I borrowed money." "What else?" "There was an accident at the textile factory where I worked. A boiler ruptured. 5 people were hurt. And the owners falsified the inspection records. I found the originals and gave copies to a journalist." Orsino understood. "They fired you. They accused me of sabotage. Dario offered to pay for a lawyer and my brother's treatment. I was desperate. Why does he still have the records? Because he arranged the lawyer? He knows the journalist's name. If the factory owners discover she has the evidence, they could hurt her." "What is her name?" "I won't tell you." His voice cooled. "You believe silence will protect her? I believe your kind of protection always comes with a price." The words landed harder than she intended. Orsino approached, stopping at the invisible distance he maintained between himself and every woman. "I have never demanded payment for protecting you. You gave me a job because you think my bad luck is useful. I gave you a job because you refused to become helpless when your home was destroyed." Nerina looked up. His anger was real, but so was something else. Respect. "If Dario is working for Voss, he may be using your debt to force you into this estate," Orsino said. "The assassination attempt failed. You were brought inside. That might have been their second plan. I didn't know. I believe you." "You do." "I do not say things I don't mean." He took her lender's contract and examined it. The interest terms are illegal. Dario doesn't appear concerned about banking regulations. He will be. "What are you going to do?" "Buy the debt." "No." His eyes narrowed. "You would rather owe him?" "I would rather repay what I borrowed myself. I can remove the threat tonight." "And replace it with what?" "Gratitude? Obligation? A place in your house until you decide I have paid enough." Orsino became very still. Nerina drew a breath. "You may not touch women, but you control everyone from a distance. You choose where I sleep, where I work, and when I'm allowed to leave. That is not trust. You are alive because of those decisions. And you are alive because I fell into you. Neither of us owns the other." She walked to the door. His voice stopped her. "The journalist's name is Yoldren." Nerina turned in shock. "She sent me copies of the factory records this morning," he said. "She believed you were in danger. The factory is owned through 3 shell companies controlled by Saber and Voss. The pieces locked together. The debt. Dario. Her apartment fire. The shooter. This was never about me saving you," she whispered. "Not at first." Voss had known Nerina possessed evidence capable of destroying one of his legitimate businesses. Dario had trapped her in debt, waiting for an opportunity to use her. When she accidentally saved Orsino, Voss had turned her into bait. If she appeared connected to Orsino, the factory evidence could be dismissed as part of a criminal feud. Worse, the corrupt clerk had altered the festival's security plans. Voss intended to strike during the celebration, when thousands of civilians filled the harbor. If you followed Nerina from one ruined champagne tower to this dangerous discovery, subscribe now, because the accident that earned her the name Lucky Goddess was about to become the only thing standing between an entire city and Sabrin Voss's plan. Orsino canceled the festival. Nerina objected. That is exactly what Voss wants, she said. The clinic depends on the donations. Vendors have invested their savings. Canceling will damage hundreds of people while he loses nothing. I will not risk civilian lives. Then don't. Change the event. In 2 days. You hired a woman who once redirected a wedding reception into a train station after the venue flooded. Was that one of your accidents? No. That was excellent planning. For the first time since their argument, his eyes softened. Nerina proposed moving the main celebration from the eastern harbor to a chain of public squares, separating the crowds from Veleki's shipping warehouses. Gavril could leak the original schedule, convincing the traders that nothing had changed. Meanwhile, Orsino's men would monitor the empty harbor and capture anyone who arrived to attack it. It was intelligent. It was also dangerous. If Voss learns you created the new plan, he will target you directly, Orsino said. He already burned my home. You will remain here. No, I'm coordinating the festival. I said, and I heard you. The answer is still no. Gavril examined the ceiling as if seeking divine patience. Orsino's jaw tightened. Leave us. When Gavril departed, Orsino crossed to the window. You think I want control? He said. Perhaps I do. Control kept me alive after my father died. It kept this organization from tearing itself apart. It prevented anyone from reaching me again, but it also kept everyone away. That was the purpose. Is it still? He looked at her reflection in the glass. Nerina's voice lowered. You don't have to trust every woman. You only need to judge each person by what she chooses to do. And if I judge incorrectly, you could be hurt. He almost smiled at the simplicity of it. That is your advice. That is closeness. You can't remove the risk without removing the person. She joined him at the window, but did not touch him. Below, the harbor lights trembled across dark water. My father used to call me his lucky star, Nerina said. After he died, everything began going wrong. I started believing I spoiled whatever I touched. You saved your brother. I put my mother into debt before taking the loan myself. You exposed a factory that endangered its workers and lost my career. You saved me and brought a criminal war to my door. Orsino turned toward her. You did not cause any of those evils. You were simply standing where other people's choices collided. Nerina swallowed. You make disasters reveal the truth, he continued. That is not the same as creating them. No one has ever said that to me. No one else was paying attention. The space between them became charged with everything neither had admitted. Slowly, Orsino extended his hand. He did not grab her. He offered it. Nerina understood what it cost him. She placed her fingers in his. His hand tightened once, then relaxed. It was the first time in 11 years that Orsino Velecki had willingly allowed a woman to touch him. The moment might have become a kiss if Gavril had not burst through the door. We found another leak. Orsino released Nerina and turned. Who? Gavril's face was grim. Tomon. Nerina refused to believe it. The elderly housekeeper had served Orsino's family for 30 years. He had cared for Lizette when she was a child and stayed beside Orsino after the attack. But evidence had been found in his room. Coded payment records, photographs of the estate, and messages arranging a meeting with Voss. Orsino ordered Tomon brought to the library. The old man did not resist. Why? Orsino asked. Tomon looked exhausted. My son owes Voss more money than he can repay. They threatened his children. You could have come to me and tell you I had failed my own family? I thought I could give them harmless information. Staff schedules, deliveries, rooms you never used. You gave them access to my home. I never told them about the festival attack. Orsino's voice dropped. You expect me to believe you? No, Tomon said. I expect you to do what your father would have done. That was the wrong answer. Orsino's father had executed traitors in the same room. Gavril's hand moved toward his weapon. Nerina stepped between them. Wait. Orsino's expression became lethal. Move. Something is wrong. The evidence is clear. Too clear. Tomon has worked here for decades. Why would he keep every piece of proof in one drawer? Tomon looked at her, confused. Nerina grabbed the payment records and held them near the lamp. The ink was faded at the edges. These were in the office printer when I spilled coffee, she said. Not these exact papers, but the same kind. Erasable ink. Gavril took a page and rubbed it. A number blurred beneath his thumb. The evidence had been manufactured, but Tomon had confessed to sharing information. Who knew about your son's debt? Nerina asked. Tomon hesitated. Gavril. Silence swallowed the room. Nerina turned. Gavril already had his gun drawn. He seized her from behind and pressed the barrel beneath her jaw. Orsino's men reached for their weapons, but Gavril dragged her against him. No one moves. The betrayal struck Orsino with brutal force. Gavril had been beside him for 13 years. He had rebuilt the security network after Lizette's death. He knew every fear Orsino possessed because he had helped turn those fears into rules. You arranged the gala shooting, Orsino said. I arranged for Voss's man to miss. Nerina's breathing stopped. Gavril smiled without warmth. The bullet was supposed to hit the statue. Then this disaster threw you into its path and nearly got you killed. Why stage an attack? To make you bring her here. Voss needed to know where Yold hid the factory evidence. Dario believed Nerina would reveal it if she felt trapped. And when I trusted her, that was unexpected. Orsino's eyes fixed on the gun beneath Nerina's chin. What do you want? The original factory records and safe passage out of Bellariva. You won't leave the estate. Then your lucky goddess won't either. Nerina's face was pale, but her eyes moved toward the desk. A crystal decanter stood near Orsino's hand. She met his gaze. He understood. What makes you think she matters to me? Orsino asked. Gavril laughed. You changed the soup. Nerina could not believe that was the evidence that betrayed them. You remembered her allergy, Gavril continued. You let her rearrange your festival. Yesterday, you dismissed 2 guards because they mocked her. Today, you let her hold your hand. His grip tightened. You built an empire around never allowing a woman close. Then one unlucky girl fell into your life, and suddenly you started behaving like a man who had something to lose. Orsino's expression remained cold, but Nerina saw the truth in his eyes. Gavril had seen it too. That is why you will give me the records, he said. No, Nerina replied. The gun pressed harder beneath her jaw. No, Gavril repeated. You planned all of this around Orsino being afraid to lose someone. You forgot I make my own decisions. She kicked the leg of the desk. The crystal decanter toppled. Orsino caught it and hurled it at the lamp. Glass exploded. The room plunged into darkness. Nerina dropped with all her weight. A gun fired above her. Orsino crossed the darkness by memory, struck Gavril's wrist, and dragged Nerina away. Guards poured in from the corridor as emergency lights turned the room red. Gavril lay on the floor with Orsino's shoe against his chest. Where is Voss? Orsino demanded. Gavril smiled through blood on his lip. Already at the festival. The celebration had begun an hour early. Someone had sent false messages to the vendors, directing them back to the Eastern Harbor. Hundreds of people were gathering near the warehouses exactly as Voss planned. Nerina's phone displayed dozens of panic messages. Orsino ordered an evacuation. It will cause a stampede, Nerina said. The entrance is too narrow. Then what do you suggest? She scanned the site map. The festival's lantern release was scheduled for midnight. Each lantern contained a small electronic light controlled through the event system. Nerina had added the feature so the colors could change with the music. Turn every lantern red, she said. What? The safety instructions tell guests that red lanterns mean move toward the waterfront squares. We can redirect the crowd without announcing an attack. And Voss. He'll see people leaving. Then we give him a reason to stay. Orsino understood. Within minutes, his convoy raced down the hill. Nerina sat beside him in the armored car, operating the festival controls from a tablet. You should remain at the estate, he said. Gavril compromised your communications. I'm the only person who knows the updated vendor network. You were almost killed. So were you when we met. That is not comforting. It wasn't intended to be. He looked at her. You asked whether the rules around my wound still served a purpose, he said. I have an answer now. This seems like a poor time. I spent 11 years believing distance would prevent loss. All it did was ensure I had nothing worth protecting. Nerina's fingers stilled above the screen. Orsino, if we survive tonight, I don't want distance from you. Then we survive. She pressed the command. Across the Easter harbor, thousands of lanterns changed from gold to crimson. Music shifted. Festival marshals directed families toward the western squares, telling them a surprise performance was about to begin. The crowd moved, slowly at first, then steadily. Voss realized the trap too late. His men had entered Warehouse 9, carrying containers marked as fireworks. Thermal cameras revealed the containers held incendiary chemicals powerful enough to ignite the fuel depot and devastate the harbor. Orsino's teams surrounded the building, but Saber and Voss was not inside. Nerina spotted him on a festival camera near the control tower, disguised in a marshal's jacket. He was moving against the crowd toward the emergency power station. If he shuts down the waterfront grid, the exit gates lock, she said. Orsino ordered the driver to turn. They reached the power station before his guards could follow. You stay in the car, he said. Nerina glared at him. Request, he corrected. Not an order. Denied. They entered through separate doors. The station was filled with humming generators and narrow metal walkways. Orsino moved ahead, weapon raised. A shadow shifted above them. Nerina shouted. Voss fired. Orsino pulled her behind a generator. The bullet struck metal, filling the air with sparks. You continue to attract terrible timing, he murmured. You continue to benefit from it. Voss's voice echoed through the station. Valecki, give me the factory records, or this entire harbor burns. Orsino checked his ammunition. You won't leave here alive, he called back. I don't need to. I only need to make sure your empire dies with me. Nerina examined the control panel beside them. One lever was labeled as the emergency flood system. The harbor warehouses had been built with seawater suppression pipes, but activating them would destroy millions of euros in machinery and cargo. She pointed. Orsino shook his head. The controls are on the upper platform. I can reach them through the maintenance passage. No, those chemicals ignite and people die. I said no. Nerina gripped his jacket. You cannot tell me. I make my own choices only when those choices are convenient for you. His fear became visible. Not fear of Voss. Fear for her. I just found you, he said. The confession nearly broke her. Then trust me. Gunfire struck the generator above them. Orsino closed his eyes for half a second. Then he removed a small knife from his belt and placed it in her hand. 3 minutes, he said. If you're not back, you'll come after me? I will tear the building apart. That sounds expensive. Nerina, she touched his face, slowly enough for him to refuse. He didn't. I'll be back. She slipped into the maintenance passage. Orsino stepped into the open and fired toward the upper walkway, drawing Voss away from her route. Nerina crawled through darkness, scraping her knees against metal. She reached a ladder and climbed toward the control platform. Below, Orsino and Voss exchanged shots between the generators. Nerina reached the lever. It would not move. A security pin held in place. She searched for a release button, found none, and looked down at the knife Orsino had given her. Of course, she muttered. A normal person would have brought tools. She forced the blade beneath the pin and pushed. The knife slipped. Her elbow struck a smaller switch. Every light in the power station turned off. Voss swore in the darkness. Orsino did not need light. For years, he had memorized every room he entered and every possible exit. Gavril had mocked the habit as paranoia. Now it saved his life. He crossed the lower walkway silently, reached Voss from behind, and drove him against the railing. The gun fell between the machines. Voss struck back, but Orsino was stronger. Above them, Nerina tried the knife again. The pin broke. She pulled the lever. A thunderous rush filled the pipes. Seawater erupted through Warehouse 9, flooding the incendiary containers before Voss's men could ignite them. Fire alarms screamed across the harbor. Emergency gates opened automatically, allowing the last civilians to escape. The sudden pressure shook the station. Nerina's platform lurched. Her foot slipped. She fell over the railing. Orsino heard her scream. He released Voss and ran. Nerina caught the edge of the walkway with both hands, hanging above the generators. Orsino reached her and dropped to his knees. "Give me your hand." "I'm trying." "Look at me." She did. There was no coldness in his face now. No distance. No rule protecting him from what she had become. Only terror and love. "I have you," he said. Voss rose behind him and reached for the fallen gun. Nerina saw the movement. "Behind you." Orsino turned as Voss aimed. A shot rang out. Voss collapsed. Tomon stood in the doorway holding a guard's pistol, his hands trembling. "Your father would have been proud of many things you became," the old man said. "But he would have hated your habit of leaving enemies conscious." Orsino almost laughed. Then he pulled Nerina onto the platform and held her against him. She expected him to release her once she was safe. He didn't. His arms tightened as years of discipline gave way all at once. Nerina buried her face against his shoulder. "I broke your knife," she whispered. "I'll buy another," and flooded your warehouses. "I own several. I may have destroyed the power grid." He pulled back just enough to look at her. "You saved thousands of people. We saved them." Sirens approached from every direction. Voss was alive, but wounded, and police officers arrested him along with the men in Warehouse 9. The factory records were delivered to federal investigators and released to the press before anyone could suppress them. Dario Kelm was arrested for extortion. Yold Rin published the full investigation, clearing Nerina's name and forcing the textile company to compensate the injured workers. Gavril accepted a deal that exposed the remaining traitors inside both organizations. Orsino did not forgive him. Some betrayals left consequences too deep for easy mercy. Toman's son entered a rehabilitation program and began repaying his legitimate debts. Toman kept his place at the estate, though Orsino restricted him from carrying firearms after he accidentally shot a grandfather clock while cleaning the weapon. The Bellariva Lantern Festival reopened 1 month later. This time, the celebration took place across the western squares as Nerina had planned. The Harbor Clinic received twice its expected donations. Vendors recovered their losses, and red lanterns became a symbol of the night the city moved together and escaped disaster. Nerina used her first real salary to repay the original amount she had borrowed for her brother's surgery. Orsino arranged for the illegal interest to disappear, but only after she made him sign a document confirming she owed him nothing. "You made me sign 3 copies, he complained. "One for me, one for my lawyer, and one in case I accidentally set fire to the first 2. She did not move permanently into the estate. Not immediately. She rented a small apartment overlooking the public gardens and rebuilt her independence. Orsino disliked the security, the locks, and nearly everything about the neighborhood, but he respected her choice. He visited every Thursday. At first, he arrived with 4 guards and an armored car, alarming the neighbors. Nerina eventually convinced him that dinner did not require a tactical operation. Their relationship grew without promises they were not ready to make. She learned when to challenge him and when to sit quietly beside him. He learned that protection was something offered, not imposed. She stopped calling herself a disaster. He stopped treating closeness like a fatal weakness. 6 months after the attack, Nerina stood in Orsino's music room and opened the glass cabinet containing Lizette's violin. "Are you sure?" she asked. "No, that is unusually honest. I am practicing." Nerina lifted the violin carefully. "You told me she was terrible." "She was. Then I can't disappoint anyone." She drew the bow across the strings. The sound resembled an angry animal being dragged through a doorway. Orsino stared at her. Nerina lowered the instrument. Not one word. He laughed. This time, the sound filled the room. She laughed with him until both of them had tears in their eyes. Then the laughter softened, and Orsino approached. "Do you know what Tamon calls you now?" he asked. "Still Fortuna? My lucky goddess." "I'm not a goddess." "No," he said. "You're stubborn, reckless, and capable of destroying expensive machinery without effort. That sounds more accurate. You also walked into a house built around grief and reminded everyone inside it how to live." Nerina's smile faded into something tender. "You let me in," she said. "I tried very hard not to. You failed. For once, I am grateful for failure." He touched her cheek. The man who had refused to let any woman close now stood without armor before the only one who had never asked him to become fearless. Nerina leaned into his hand. "What if my bad luck returns?" she asked. Orsino glanced at the broken violin string hanging from the bow. "I expect it will. And if I ruin another warehouse, I'll build a stronger one. If I spill wine on your contracts, I'll use permanent ink. And if I knock you down again," his expression softened, "then I will know I am exactly where I need to be." He kissed her beneath the warm lights of the music room while, somewhere in the corridor, something crashed. They separated. Tomon shouted, "I'm fine." Nerina looked at Orsino. "That wasn't me." "I know. Are you disappointed?" "Deeply." A year later, the old Valecki estate no longer felt like a monument to solitude. Women worked throughout the house. Children from the harbor clinic visited the gardens. Music returned to the rooms, though Nerina's violin lessons remained a threat known only to close friends. She founded the Vale Safety Foundation with Yold, helping workers report dangerous conditions without losing their homes or livelihoods. Orsino funded it, but held no authority over its decisions. That had been Nerina's condition. He agreed because he had finally learned that loving a powerful woman did not mean directing her path. It meant standing beside her while she chose it. At the next Lantern Festival, Orsino and Nerina watched thousands of lights rise over Bellariva. Gold filled the sky, except for one red lantern Nerina held between them. "For danger?" he asked. "For change." Together, they released it. The lantern climbed above the harbor where a collapsing tower, a missed bullet, and one supposedly unlucky girl had altered both their lives. People still feared Orsino Valecki. He remained disciplined, powerful, and ruthless toward anyone who threatened those under his protection. But those closest to him knew the truth. He no longer believed love made a man weak. Love had taught him when to hold on, when to let go, and when to place his life in another person's hands. And Nerina no longer believed she brought disaster wherever she went. Sometimes she spilled things. Sometimes she broke things. Sometimes plans collapsed the instant she entered a room. Yet the right things emerged from the wreckage. Hidden crimes, unexpected courage, second chances, and a man who had buried his heart behind locked gates. She had never been cursed. She had simply possessed a strange kind of luck, one that arrived noisily, overturned everything, and refused to leave until the truth stood uncovered. If Nerina's journey touched you, subscribe to the channel for more emotionally powerful stories. And tell us in the comments, which moment stayed with you most? The collapsing champagne tower, Orsino offering Nerina his hand, her dangerous climb to activate the flood system, or the red lantern they released together?